Welcome back to Mastering Change. Today we're talking about something that seems simple, but it's actually one of the most powerful tools we have for healing: play.
But not just play in the way we think of games or toys. We're talking about play as a state of being, a way to connect, regulate, and build safety in our relationships, especially with our children.
Our guest today is Debi John, founder of Play Healing. She's on a mission to help people, especially parents, live life in a play-fueled way. Her approach is simple, science-backed, and rooted in connection.
After years of working in this field, Debi realized something radical. Sometimes the most effective therapy doesn't happen in a clinical playroom. It happens at home, between a parent and their child. And her model, pause, play, connect, is making that possible.
We talk about what play really means for adults, how it impacts our nervous systems, and why creativity can't thrive in rigid, high-pressure environments, whether you're parenting, working, or simply trying to heal.
This episode's for anyone who's ever felt burnt out, disconnected, or unsure how to show up for their kids or themselves. Debi's work is a beautiful reminder that small moments of play can create lasting change.
Away we go. Debi John, welcome to the podcast today. It's a pleasure to have you. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Welcome. So, as most of our podcast listeners will now know, we start every episode with a little card game that has the intention to connect you with us and you with our audience. So, I've just picked a random selection of cards here, and on each of these cards, there's a little prompt, which will hopefully encourage you to sort of say something about whatever the prompt says, whatever the card says. So I shall read. Our card says, "My first taste of heartbreak. ..
Oh my goodness. I remember really fancying a boy in my class, and it was Valentine's Day coming up. So I bought a little chocolate egg and I wrote a little note, and I sneaked it in their locker, and found out that no, I wasn't his cup of tea. So and then the whole class found out that it was me, and it was very embarrassing. But we're still friends to this day, actually, and we've worked with each other ever since. So it wasn't all tears. And I then got a new boyfriend, and I was very happy. So, but yeah, it's you feel so exposed and so vulnerable and so like small, don't you? At that young, tender age of, I don't know, 11 or something. That's a light-hearted one, I think.
It's amazing how it stays with you though as well. Like, even though it was so, you're 11 years old, and it still stays with us. And it's a really lovely story that you're still, friends, or you still know each other. I think that's really nice. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really
reflecting. I just want to know, as you were reflecting on that, there's a physical, like I observed, if there's a physical, because I then was doing the same, like how would I answer that question? And as well as the story tells, there is the physical imprint, like you call it in words, but
yeah.
also like a real, like I put my hand on my heart because I was just like, oh, I can feel that. I can tune in and feel that.
Yeah, especially when you make something or you do something that's personalized. I think that's always one of those interesting things, is it's that creative stuff. We're all made, aren't we, to create, but that's actually part of us because it's our ideas or our movements that we've made to make that art. So yeah, it's thing. But heartbreak, like, teaches us so much about ourselves, doesn't it, as well? And I'm happy to go in deeper. But have you got any others? Have you got any other beautiful questions? I've never seen these. Where are they from?
Oh, it's a wonderful game. It comes in a box. So yeah, it's Esther Perel's "Where Should We Begin?" And we
love that.
We used it we went to Dartmouth with our team, because we all work remotely. And we had a night of, there's a load that relate to sex. So, careful you play it with. But it was just such a way of us sitting around the table after dinner and really get into kind of the deep conversations that matter when you're forging relationships, and having compassion for one another. It all is a byproduct of understanding individuals beyond what we all want to show, how we all show up and present this kind of curated view, especially in the context of digital space. I mean, we connected on LinkedIn, didn't we? And it's that's a highly curated space. Facebook is a highly curated space. And this game, it's a really lovely, it's playful.
That's the thing, isn't it? And it's like, I mean, I know I'd love to dig in more about what you do, Debbie, but kind of, I know some of the challenges that you kind of approach, like how do we become more playful in such a digital age? And I think this card game, for example, is a way for adults to kind of like play again in a situation where perhaps we wouldn't necessarily have kind of games or anymore anyway.
Yeah, I think it'd be really good for us to stay there, because the word playful has a kind of Marmite effect on me now. Because playfulness is a beautiful expression, and it's wonderful to be playful. And there's now, because of all the research on play and the power of play and all the science coming out, I feel like I was feeling the pressure to be jovial and feel like I had to be playful all the time with my children. But then I was like, I feel really fake doing this. I'm not a clown. I'm not this sort of person that's just doing, Tigger. And I don't think that children need us to be like, hey guys, morning, how are you today? Gonna put on your shoes? I mean, I have come across a couple of parents that are like that constantly, but that also worries me, because like, I'm tired sometimes, and I'm heartbroken, and I get anxious and all these other emotions, and we are beautifully broken human beings, and we are creative human beings. And how much beautiful art has been made through heartbreak and pain and all this stuff. That's still creativity. So creativity is this beautiful state that I do believe we want to be flowing in and accessing whenever we can, right? In marketing, you have to be able to find your flow, find that creative space. You can think about how you can reach your audience and how you're going to bring this brand to the market. And if you are feeling anxious or heightened or stressed in these different forms, then it's going to be really hard to create. And so play fueling our life is this new expression I've been really trying to get out there, being fueled by play, because play is that ventral vagal state, that optimum state of performance that we actually want to still be functioning as much as possible as adults.
It's fascinating, but you touched on creativity and play. And so how do you define play then? That I think that will be a start for our audience, because like you said, there are periods of time and like heartbreak, grief, creativity can be really heightened because you're really in touch with emotions, and they're not necessarily comfortable emotions, but they incite something that isn't out. So talk to me about the definition of play and the difference between play and creativity.
I don't have enough time for that.
Choose any.
There's a few words. So we know that the word curiosity and play go hand in hand. If we have that, we maintain that curiosity about the world, about what's going on within us, and that beautiful childlike curiosity. Why do we throw that away? And what helps me and a lot of my clients to define play is thinking about what the opposite to play is. And one of the most beautiful contrasts to play and living a play-fueled life is having a very rigid life or feeling very rigid inside. Because rigidity kills creativity. When you feel like I have to paint a picture now, I'm going to have to write a creative piece of writing. I have to be happy I have to be, you know, and this pressure, it's like something dies inside of us. And yeah, play is such a beautifully broad phenomenon, I call it. It's because it takes on so many forms: playful thinking, playful actions, and it's making sense of the world, and it's got sense of joy sometimes there as well. But it's discovery, and it's adventure, and this is the optimum state of living. I really do believe.
In a way, you've sort of answered my question there, because what you've described in playful is got a positive emotional attribution to it, where creativity doesn't always come out of the kind of it's a positive outcome. But the state of being in play, I think, is always, for me anyway, play is synonymous. Think about the whole of the Christmas holiday. We just came back. The Sunday before we came back, it snowed like crazy.
Yeah.
And we played with play. You know, we just had a totally deconstructed day. And I like how you described it as, one, it gave me great permission as a parent for the life that I lead with my children, which is often not overly structured or rigid or routine. But also the fact that those unstructured days where you haven't got huge expectations, you know, to go out and play outside, to then cook in and bake and then watch a movie together. It was so fluid and organic. You know, like just very relaxed and joyful and you know, like those. And I do think we've lost a lot of connection with that, but it is very difficult, as you said, to not only integrate that as a parent, but, you know, we talk about this, how are we playful in the context of our work when it's so serious and so difficult and so gnarly, you know?
And the pressure you're talking about, I think pressure and also comparison. God, I hate the fact that I can see what all these other wonderful parents are doing with their children and cooking these beautiful cakes, and their houses look immaculate. And whenever I kind of used to get into that and start comparing my parenting, for example, with anyone else, the comparison just killed the joy in me. And I do say comparison kills joy, and that can kill that kind of wanting to explore and play. But what you're also talking about, like you say, you've enjoyed this Christmas break, you have paused and given yourself permission to play, and you found connection. You found that beautiful connection with your children and maybe a partner or yourself. You know, it took me a couple of weeks just to decompress and think, what am I feeling? How am I doing? Wow. And we just had New Year's Day. Lots of people are reflecting on last year and setting new goals. They have to pause, don't they, to reflect and learn and evaluate and get curious about what felt really healthy, what worked, what didn't work, what were the greatest challenges, all those kinds of things. You know, you're playing with thoughts, and you have to pause, and it's so countercultural. I was someone who was burning the candle at both ends, always had done. I was working in the creative industries and doing lots of singing and gigging and writing and being in recording studios and then teaching and then having children and quite an anxious mum for the first few years. And whenever I thought I was being peaceful and calm, I was actually just in shutdown, and I was actually a bit depressed. And I couldn't differentiate between that shutdown and calmness. I thought they were the same, but they weren't, until I experienced that ventral vagal, calm, present world. And I started training as a therapist, and I went on and did some other modalities. My eyes were opened, and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm seeing the world in a completely different way. And I want that for my clients now.
So talk to us a little bit about your work then. What is it that you do? How do you do it? Who do you do it with?
So, 20 years ago, I was coming out of doing pop music and gigging, and I was singing and wanted to just teach music. And so I was secondary teaching hundreds of children, and loved the challenge of that. And still love that now. Still love teaching, and I've just been doing that today. But I then really noticed the increase of mental health challenges in our young people, the increase of children with additional needs, with trauma, and all these kinds of things. And I got a new role working in the community. And with no training, I was mentoring children who'd been gang raped, who had been displaced, and all sorts of things. And I thought, I need to get supervision here. And I met this beautiful psychologist, started to get supervision, and then started my training and trained as a play therapist. Decided whether to do music therapy or play therapy. But I did the play therapy and then started working in schools and then as a play therapist. Well, this really works. I love the fact that we can use the modality of art, of dance, of storytelling, of music. You know, the child can come into your room and explore their emotions through all these different mediums. Really wonderful. And saw children who had experienced domestic abuse, selective mutism, depression, anxiety, not wanting to come to school, being fostered, all sorts of experiences. And it was beautiful. And it was very easy, though, for me to connect and build relationship with these children because I hadn't gone through the stress that maybe the parents had gone through. I could be that sort of neutral, safe attachment for them. So we would build up this attachment and then I'd have to have a healthy ending and go. And I'd only have maybe 1 or 2 meetings with the parent. And I thought, this is all well and good, but I think there must be a more effective way here of seeing change and supporting children. And I could only see like 5 a day, for example. And I then studied something called theraplay, which is that modality where you've got parent and child in the room. And that really resonated with me. I thought, this is exciting. Let's explore this. So I explored this more. And then I thought, hang on a minute, what would happen if I just saw the parent and I didn't do the work in the playroom with the actual child? And I modelled games and different activities and different tools with the parent. But I had this monkey from this big big furry monkey, and I would model the interactions and the games just with this monkey. And then they would go home and try these out. And we saw incredible results in a third of the time that it would have taken if I'd been working with the child myself. Because you think about it from an attachment point of view, they spend about 6 to 8 weeks getting used to you, getting to know you, feeling comfortable in the playroom. Then they do the deeper work for however many weeks, and then they come out the other side. Whereas in many instances, now this isn't just as a disclaimer, there is absolutely a need for play therapy where it's just child and therapist, because there are instances, say, for example, where the parent isn't available, has died, or isn't safe for that child, and we absolutely need that. But for other situations out there, if we can support the actual parent who has that existing relationship to be more therapeutic in their general approach, then the impact lasts for a lifetime. And I was like, I wish I'd known the things I learned as a play therapist when my children were little, because my kids are now 17 and 18. So it went from there. And then a few years later down the line, with all the work I was doing, the research, and obviously learning polyvagal theory of it, and what Bessel van Cott was doing, and Gabor Mate, and Deb Dennard, all these wonderful other practitioners. But I was thinking, I need something with these families, so they're very vulnerable families, that are simple, actionable, actually make an impact. Because some schools can only afford 8 sessions, 2 sessions, 6 sessions. So what's the most ethical thing there? Building a relationship with a kid for 6 sessions? I'm not sure that is. So this way meant that I could support those, and they're literally only a couple of sessions, just a bit of psychoeducation there about pausing, tuning into your child, and using play as a vehicle of connection, just explaining that everyone's made for connection, and it makes a massive difference. And tuning into the child, saying, what do they love to do? Oh, they like water play. Fantastic. Why don't we try this? Or they really like rough play. Why don't we try some non-directive play? Why don't we try some power reversal play? Try this. Get them on your back. Get them to tell you where to go. Get them to have a pillow fight with you and you fall over. All these things to help these children cope in these really sad and stressful situations.
I love the switch in emphasis from the child to the parent, because I think so often we're looking at the manifestation of an issue that started, with that dynamic, that attachment, some issue with that attachment. And I also love it because if I think about like the work of Jonathan Haidt, talk about we become really unsafe in the digital world and way too safe in a physical world. It's not necessarily empowering to a parent going, what do I do with that? But what you're saying, the equipping parents with ways and means of being in play, like in play appropriate to their child, like the different things you've talked about. I was just reflecting on my own children, thinking one likes to be roughed up, like books in for roughing up time, daddy. The other one wants like snuggle time with mummy, like understand,
but nurturing kind of
exactly, like a different tactile it just is, it's nervous system, it's all to do with nervous systems. But I just, I'm nodding with huge agreement, because I think it's such an interesting approach that you've adopted, is equipping the parents and empowering the parents, which is,
there's no shame, right? But
yeah.
when I found out about when I found out about how the brain works and responds to stress, and why maybe it isn't appropriate for me to pursue somebody who's in a state of heightenedness and absolutely lost it, where it's maybe not the time to resolve conflict, for example. Because someone explained what was going on in my brain, and I was like, oh, that's why. Oh, that gives me the why as to, right, I'm going to change my behaviors now. And sometimes that's all it needs, just someone to just come alongside you and go, you are doing such a good job. But did you know that if you did this, this would happen to their brain and it would help them to feel more safe? Or if this happened, maybe just pause a bit. Maybe just pause before you struggle. They come up to you and you're on your phone. Maybe just put it down and get them some eye contact and answer them.
I mean, I was, I remember actually, I think it was Bessel who told me once. He said, anytime your child walks into a room, you need to look up from whatever you're doing and act as though it's the most amazing, incredible thing. It just come into your space, and it doesn't matter what you're doing, whether you're on a meeting or whatever, you just want to be like, oh, wow, you're here. Even if you have to say to them after, sorry, I'm on a meeting, you're going to go, but just make sure that you acknowledge their presence in that space. And I think it's really important. And little things like that are very easy to kind of, maintain and do as a parent. Another thing that I really wanted to sort of flag as you were talking there, which I think because it's so brilliant, and I always struggle with the system. I don't know if it's global, but certainly in the UK, where, whether you work in schools or whether you work in the NHS or whether you work in the police or prison system, whatever, you are given 6 or 8 or 2 sessions, like you said, to kind of work with these people, and you're trying to build these therapeutic relationships, which actually does more damage, especially when people who are traumatized and have attachment issues, to then go in, offer them 6 sessions, start to build a relationship, and then remove it it's more traumatizing often to do that than it is not to. But by working with the parent, as you say, you're just equipping the parent to continue that. You don't need to build a therapeutic relationship with the child. The child has their relationship with their parent. Broken or not, there is an opportunity to repair it then, repair what could. And the parent is able to, just be equipped to be more relational with their child in whatever way that comes up. So I think it's, a brilliant solution, actually.
I'm reminded of the work of Ruth Cohen as well, the trauma of neglect. Because she talked about how easy it is to kind of recover that connection. Like what was the statistic she was giving us? How many times you can get it wrong, but it's something like it was really empowering. I think
like 35% or something of the time. Is it about how much secure attachment a child needs? Is that
that's it? That's it. That's it. You only need to be
some percentage
that for a percentage of it, and it's a relatively small. It's a very empowering message for a parent, especially given the current aspect of their life on parents.
Yeah, I've been a single parent and experienced that, and it's really tough, really tough. And that is why what you were saying, also inspired the work I did with that feather project when the Ukrainian war happened. Because again, I was like, they were like, oh, we need to, come over and do your play therapy with us, like with the Ukrainian families and the children and stuff. And I was like, I spoke to a very dear friend of mine who is the CEO of Refugee Education. She is extremely experienced in working with refugees. And so it's no credit to me, this. But she said it's so damaging when teams of people come over for a week. So I was going to this big thing in Warsaw in Poland where there were 5,000 refugees, all the black beds that you saw on the news, all lined up together. They only had a couple of bags with them, but they had made these play centres with a load of kind of toys and stuff in that the parents could kind of drop their children off, and these teams of people from all around the world would come and play with their children and give them a bit of time and then go. Now, the environment in those places was lovely. The people working there meant well, and they were doing some beautiful work. But what was going on really was this child is bonding with a new person who's lovely, safe, playing, happy person. But then that person was leaving them again, and they had just been displaced. And so what I went is I came in with 1,000 feathers in my bag and some flyers in Ukrainian because I couldn't speak Ukrainian, but it explained pause, play, connect. And I just gave them 3 or 4 different games they could play just using one feather. Because I also knew that if I came with loads of equipment, I'd only have enough for 100 families, say, or 50 families. And then what do I do with the rest? I want to help as many people as I can. So I kept it really simple. It's all about connection, blowing a feather to your child and then blowing it back. If you break down the power of that, you've got the eye contact, you've got the controlled breath, which will help to calm their nervous system at the same time. You've got the joy of the feather going in any direction and them trying to catch it. And then there's the laughter, and it's light. You don't get injured by a feather. And so I was seeing and witnessing beautiful connection in one of the hardest places I've ever visited. And it was just keeping it simple and knowing from the research that this is bound to work because there's a family and I'm empowering that family. And my intervention with each family was probably 2 minutes to 5 minutes per family. That's nothing, isn't it? But they kept the feather, they kept the games, they kept those memories, and it was a little bit of joy in a tough space. One of them was mindful breath and just blowing on that feather. Now, if they'd lost that feather, they could find one in nature. So it's a sustainable thing as well. It's something I would love to have the resource to do more of. But what I was able to do is create a little program a video about it and send it out to other therapists across Poland, and I worked with some in the Ukraine, but remotely, giving them these tools, and then they implemented it in their centres. So that's what is beautiful about the internet, and how we can connect with other people across the world, because we can share ideas and try things out. I really do wish I could do more, but it's just not the season right now to, maybe there's someone out there that has the resource to fund more, but it really does work.
Yeah, to advocate for what I'm hearing is that you're advocate. There is absolutely a role for play therapy, as you've pointed out, but actually a new approach to play therapy that starts with enabling and empowering the parents to be the facilitators of that healing journey.
I think that's what Theraplay does, though, isn't it? That's what the Theraplay is. That the right Theraplay idea?
Theraplay is lovely because it's modelling games that help to build bond, connect that child with the parent. And there are set games, and there's Marshak sort of evaluation that you do at the beginning, which is really wonderful. And it's a more intense type of therapy. It's normally about 24 sessions that you would do with a family, and often they work with families who have just fostered a child, or there's adoption process or things like that, as well as other beautiful things. So yeah, therapy is wonderful. I just found that I wanted something even simpler: pause, play, connect. So these 3 words, I think, go a long way, and have now been implemented in business and sex life and relationships. And that's why one of the reasons why I went to the Oxford Master Series, and because I was like, I've got this philosophy, this theory, someone pull it apart. I'm going to take it to some of the top people, top researchers. Does this align with what the science says? Does this align with what the science says? And I'm still open for it to be disproved, but on this, on an impact level, and it's a great sort of starting block, I believe, that therapists can use when they're starting out with a new family.
Yeah, I think it's great. As I said, I think it's really just because it is simple, and it draws on things like Theraplay and play therapy, traditional play therapy, and it's just, the ability to reach many, many more people and have that impact and have that connection with many more people because it is so simple. I mean, the 1,000 Feathers was just inspired, to be honest, and I really hope that more people listening to this podcast even will kind of pick up on that, because I think it's brilliant. I really do.
Bless you.
Bit about Mike Nickentrock and
and Dr. Alexander Chen, they're all working with the refugees from Palestine.
And those symbols that we've chosen, the heart, the pause sign, and the play sign, are universal. And I didn't realize that at the time until I did the project a few years ago, because I was like, I said to someone in Armenia, I think I was working with, would this work with your family? She said, yeah, everyone's got a mobile phone. They all know what pause means. And I just remember the word pauza in the Ukrainian pause. I still use these little, pause tattoos. I just had a dream of making tattoos that have pauses on. And it kept with me, and took me about a year or two to actually implement. But sometimes you just have a little idea and you don't really know if it's going to have any impact. And I've had many that are absolute rubbish, but this one seems to have some power behind it.
Okay, and Debbie, I'm going to ask you the question that we ask all of our podcast guests. So if we zoom right out, we live in quite a world of a lot of fear and anxiety and doubt. We can see that play out in many different contexts, at an individual level, communities and societies, and that macro political or economic or even just the way that climate change, there's a lot of factors that are affecting how people feel. If there was one lever for change that you could pull, one button that you could push, one wish that you could have granted, what would it be to create the change that we need to see in the world?
I think that what we've been talking about is that pause button. People pausing to say, where am I at? And where is that person in front of me at? And tuning into them. This attunement piece, which is also what this model is about, is so vital for a healthy society, isn't it?
Yeah.
Pausing to tune into that other person and to then get curious and to build healthy connections. If there were healthy relationships and we were in a more connected society with beautiful open hearts, I think that we would have an easier time in the social care system, and we'd save a lot of money. I do think, I guess, one thing that does affect the world is money. Money is a very powerful energy that we, and it can be used for good and it can be used for, well, death. And I would love to see more money invested in prevention rather than the firefighting that we're often having to do as teachers, as therapists, as parents, as leaders, politicians, not forgetting that prevention is absolutely where it's at, and we should never stop sowing into this younger generation. The early years, we all know from the research and looking at all the research out there that the early years are vital for physical health, mental health, everything else, harmony. So if we could continue to have our eyes on the next generation and really, really keep a balance, I think we would have a much happier healthier society.
Debi, it's been a real pleasure meeting you. Thank you for making time to talk to us today. I've really enjoyed the conversation and definitely taken something away as a person and a parent.
Oh, no, lots of love to you and lots of love to people who are on the front line. And I really feel for them. I've worked with children on the age of care and in children's homes and long shifts and lots of traumatic situations. And again, for the workers working in those things, pausing really does make an impact, doesn't it? Looking after our nervous system, tuning into where we're at, taking that breath before we respond, before we reach out, before we try and protect and or reflect or whatever we're doing at the time. So yeah, sending love and thank you for what you're doing. It's been absolutely lovely to meet you. Thank you.